Hello everyone, this is going to be the video for making the French fold with wrapper cover. So this is a pamphlet style book, but the interior, instead of being a section, is going to be a French fold from one sheet of paper. So the way, first we're just going to make the French fold, and the way we do that is similar to the single sheet books. We're going to start like that. We're going to fold the short edges together. So fold the piece of paper in half with the short edges together, but then you're going to leave it folded. So this, I am taking my time. And then we're going to leave that folded. So now we've got this, and then we're going to just fold that in half. So again, you're going to bring the short edges together. So you're going to fold it from this short edge to this one. So you leave it folded. So you might want to be careful that you don't crimp the fold at the center. So I kind of used my finger to pull it back, make sure it didn't fold in on itself at the edge. Okay. And I'm just checking to make sure it's pretty square all the way around. And that's your French fold. So that's a simple 4-page book. So it's like cover and back, and then the interior spread. Okay. So now we're going to fold this into a wrapper. So you're going to pick one of those strips that you originally prepped. And the way we're going to do this is we're going to fold it. We're going to sew it in to a fold that we're going to make. And then we're going to create the cover as it wraps around like that. And then we're going to sew it in right after we fold it. Okay, so you have this full strip here. And on one end, you're going to fold just like maybe 2.5 or 3 inches, probably 2.5 is good. And I usually just eyeball that, about 2.5. And I'm just going to fold a little flap over like that. So that's like 2.25, this one is. But what I'm mainly worried about is keeping that straight with itself here. And so just fold that in like that. Okay, and so that's going to be the back flap of the book. So when we're putting this in place, the top of the French fold is the folded edge, and the bottom is the open edge. So the spine, if you think about this, and sometimes I will take a pencil, and you can do this as well. This is your mock-up set. This is not what you're going to do for your final. So it's a good idea to kind of, make this usable so that you can learn from it. So we're going to put cover and back, and then inner spread or something. You can write whatever you want on here like that, just for learning purposes. And so we have something to refer to later if we wanted to make this again. So the way that this is going to get put together is, this is the back of the book, and this is the back of the French fold. We're going to line those up together so that they go in like this. So this is the back, and the back are against each other like that. Okay, and that's how we're going to sew this. So then we're going to open to the center, and we're going to punch and sew this. But before we do that, I just wanted to get you set up so you kind of get what we're getting ready to do. We have to make a punching jig for this, okay? So we need a 3-hole punching jig, and this is the same height as the text block, and it's maybe a little bit shorter than what we cut for our cover, and that's okay. It'll still work. And what I want to do is first find the center of this. So if this is about 5.5, again, I'm just going to use my mat, and I can find that center point. So that's going to be my center one. So I'll just make a tick mark with the pencil. And then what I want to do is on each end, I really just want to come in about 5/8 of an inch. So for that, I'm just going to go down to the ruler and measure 5/8 and 5/8 on the other end. So that's what that looks like. So there's a center mark, and there's 2 end marks that are going to be, this is how many holes we're going to punch, 3 holes. Okay. So now what I want to do with that, this is where your little snip scissors come in handy. So I'm going to cut at those marks a little V, just a real tiny V. You could also do this with your X-Acto if you feel better about that. So if you can see how small that is, that little V right there. So it's real small, just the tips of the scissors. And I'm using, that one's a little bit bigger. You might be able to see that one better compared to that first one. That's probably more about what you can do, what you should do. Okay. So there's your jig. And now what we're going to do is open up to the center and put this in and punch through everything. Okay, so there's a couple of ways of doing this. So you can try to use like a catalog. Just trying to think of ways to help people use what they have at home. So you could put your book down into the, this is a nice thick catalog, so that's going to work great for this. I can put that in place. And this is where I need my awl. I do need an awl or a needle. You're going to need this, your needle awl. Okay. And I can put it into the catalog and sort of punch straight down through everything. But I want to make sure everything's lined up. So I'm looking at where the top of the book is and where all that stuff is. And if I push down too hard, it's going to bend that. So you're going to have to kind of play around with this a little bit. And again, probably need to stand up so you can see straight down, and because you want to punch through everything. I'm a little worried this isn't going to work, that I'm going to lose pressure, but I'm going to just do it. Punch. That's hard to see. You can't see what I'm doing, but I'm punching where those little V's are. Wish I could get, I can hold this up to the camera. Awkward. What I'm doing is punching where those little V's are. Can you guys see? You can see that. Oh, no, that's too close. But there's a hole where that little V is, and that needs to go all the way through the cover to the other side. And then if that's too awkward, I mean, I thought that was a great idea, but maybe it's not. The other thing you can do is, I'm just going to rotate this around, is you can just do it like this on the tabletop. And maybe I won't do that again with the catalog because it's a little bit awkward. But I think people find this difficult too, because you can't, again, you can't see what I'm doing. But I've got the jig, the back of the book, and the jig in place. And then I'm just going to kind of take my awl and go in at a 45-degree and punch through. Again, this is a testament to doing your best, you know, trying your best and doing what you can. I mean, that works perfectly fine. It really does. There's enough resistance there and you can punch through. So we're not, it's not like we're punching through a lot at once. So it really works okay. So suffice to say, what you want is this. So those 3 holes, punch through the cover, fold, and through the French fold inside. And you want those holes to line up. Okay, so that's what you're going to do to get your holes in place. Now, for sewing, what you want to do is you want to measure out enough thread that is 2.5 the height of the book. So we're going to go 1, 2.5. Oh, I already have what is that? I don't know what that's from. So I'm going to start again because that piece was already just on there. Maybe I only need to do 1.5. let's do two times the height of the book. So I think 2.5 is too much. Let's do 2. I forget. Suddenly I forget how to just do 1. Let's do 2 times the height of the book. And then we're going to put our needle on. So you're going to thread the needle. Just put the thread through the eye of the needle, pull it on. And you want to pull it a little bit past it. There's a short tail that you can hold on to that, to the 2 thicknesses, and then have a long thread out here. Okay, so what we're going to do is, this is the first pamphlet that we're going to sew. And before I even start, I'm going to line up the holes, and I'm starting on the inside, and I'm just going to take my needle and kind of open up the holes so that the paper's going through at the right spot. It's almost like I'm pre-threading it and pushing the paper together right now at the thickness of the needle that I'm going to use. Okay, so I'm just opening the hole, so I'm pushing the needle in and then pulling it back out. And I'm doing it from the inside, so you can't see where I'm going in. I'm going in here, but I'm coming out the spine of the book. This is where I want you to start. Okay, so we're going to start in the center hole on the inside, and wherever you start at this, if you start on the inside, you're going to end on the inside. If you start on the outside, you're going to end on the outside, and you'll see that when we get to another. I think the next one that we do, you're going to sew it from the outside. But we want the knot on the inside for this one because it's going to wrap around itself and create a wrapper. So we're going to start on the inside and pull the needle through. And then you're going to hold the tail on the inside because you want to be able to tie a knot in the end. So you want to stop so that there's like 3 inches of thread inside. Stop. And then you're going to go up or down. It doesn't matter which direction you go, whatever feels comfortable. I'm going to go to the right, and I'm going to go in that hole from the outside. So I came out on the back, and then I'm going to go in to the inside from here. And I'm still kind of hanging on to that thread so that I don't accidentally pull it through. I still want to maintain that needle, the tail. So now I'm on the inside of the book again. I have 1 stitch on the back like that. Came through the center, out one end. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go all the way down to the other end. I'm not going to go in the middle. You might be tempted to do that, but don't do that. Go all the way down to the other end and bring the needle out. So you can still accidentally pull that tail too far. So if you kind of start to do that, just pull it back. Okay, so I've got that long stitch on the inside, just 1 long thread. And then I've got 1 more stitch to make, and that's to go back in the center hole. And when I come in the center hole, I want to try to come out, bring the thread through on the opposite side of where the other one is. So if I accidentally come out on the same side, I can just take my needle and pull it through. Just take it underneath that long thread and pull it to the other side, because now I can take my needle off. So I'm going to go ahead and pull my needle all the way through. And now I want to tie a knot. So I need to have 1 thread to tie on this side and 1 thread on the other side of that long thread in the center. And now I'm going to tie a square knot. So I'm going to take left over right, under, tie a knot, and then right over left. And that's a square knot. And now I can trim that off. It's about 1/4 of an inch away from the knot, like that. And now you're finished sewing. So now that's sewn into the book, and now we're going to make the rest of the wrapper. Okay, so now what we need is we're going to use that awl again to score with, and we are going to use a ruler. Now, so what we need to do is we need to fold. The way that this is going to work is where the foredge of the book is here, we're going to score a little edge and then fold back, and you're going to see what I'm doing. So what you're going to do is you're going to slide your ruler underneath. And again, I've got my cork side up because I want this to slide into place. So I'm going to slide my ruler underneath so that I can barely see the metal sticking out. And I do want to be able to see it because that's going to be the foredge of the book. So all the way down, let me point to it right here, I can see the barely sticking out edge of the metal of the ruler, just barely reflecting in the light there. And that's where I'm going to score. So again, I'm going to take my awl and do this, and don't do it straight down where you're going to scratch the paper and use the tip of the awl. You don't want to do that. Lay it down on its side. Use a little bit of finger pressure right here and just pull. And that's going to be your score. Maybe I'll do it twice. It's almost like I'm laying the awl down and I'm just dragging that kind of that curve against it. Okay, so I made my little score mark, and now I'm going to fold that back. So I can still see the paper. And here's where, again, you know, I made the score mark I made, but I also want to make sure that I'm folding it straight. So I'm looking at the edges. I'm looking out here to make sure that looks even, but I'm also looking at the top and the head and the tail of the book. Okay, so then you can see, because I left that little bit of metal, I can have a little nice paper foredge right here that you can see. It's not even with the paper. It's coming out like maybe a 1/16 of an inch, probably not even that much. Okay, next mark, our next score that we're going to do is at the spine. This one's a little easy because you can kind of just do it almost. But I go ahead and I put my ruler under, and I'm going to almost bring it even with that thread that's right here. Put that metal kind of straight down underneath that. And it's just giving me a little bit of something to push against it. I'm not like pushing the thread when I score this, but I really want it right underneath that thread. And I'm going to score here. Because you want this tight. You don't want to have a little bulge in the back, because this is going to be the spine of the book right here. So then I'm going to wrap this around. And again, just take a second and make sure everything looks straight. Okay. And now we have the cover is done. So now we've just got to do the back of the book. So this piece is the last fold that we're going to make. And we want it to fold over this flap, kind of hold it in place, but we're not going to tape it or do anything. We just want it to be a little bit shorter. And you can see that's way more than we need. If I folded that, it's more than we need, but I'm going to show you. So again, we're going to do that same thing we did before, but this time the whole book is done except for this last flap. So I'm going to lay this down and I'm going to put my ruler. We're kind of going to do what we did, but instead of, we won't see as much metal. We want these two foredges to match up. So really what you want to do is what we did at the spine, where you can barely see that metal edge. Not as much as you could the first time, but you can see it because you do want a little bit of a foredge. You don't want it to be flush, but you want it to be right there. Okay, so just a little bit of that metal showing, and then I'm going to score that a couple times. And then this is now going to fold in. So this last flap folds in at that score mark. So I'm just going to kind of do it soft, and because I've got to do a trim right here. This is probably not going to be so you can see that's too tight. It's like scraping up against the book right here. So I need to trim off a little bit of this fold. So before I even push any further, because I don't want to crimp it or anything, I'm going to trim off like 1/4 of an inch right there. And this is where your triangle, again, would be a good thing to use. And really what you want to do, let me show you this, is cut it about 1/4 of an inch away. So you can kind of like lightly fold it in and just kind of gently hold it. And then right here at the spine of the book, you can kind of eyeball. You can even use your mat. So I'm putting the fold up against a mark, and then 1/4 inch. That's how much I'm going to cut off. If you can see that little mark. So that's about how much I'm going to cut off there. Can't tell if you guys can see that or not. Kind of move it around. That's how much I'm going to cut off. So then I can just kind of lay this down, use my triangle to make sure I'm cutting it square. And I need an X-Acto to just trim that off. And that's it. And now I can, again, checking that everything's straight, I can fold it pretty firm. And then I can check here to make sure my 4 edges are really pretty even. And then if I need to make any little adjustment there, I can do it. Kind of roll that in a little bit more if needed. And then I can take my bone folder. If you have a Teflon, you can use that directly. If you don't have a Teflon, you might want to grab a little scrap because you can accidentally burnish. If you have your bone folder, just kind of gently push and bone fold that down. And there's your French fold. That's the first book. So this is going to be loose in the back. Sometimes people don't like that, but if you try to tape it or double or glue it or something, it can get a little funny. So you want to be careful about that. I usually don't. I just leave it. And it's also, once it's been closed for a while, it doesn't pop out as much when you open it. Okay, so that's the French fold binding, number 1. Thanks.